I take great comfort in the fact that there are, as I say, millions of people in Britain and around the world who do get this. They may not think about it in the sort of abstract conceptual way that we're talking, but they get it instinctively. And unfortunately, they don't have political or cultural leadership. And so that's the difficulty that we're facing.
Yeah, that is so true. You know, when I do talks, and I'm sure you have a similar experience, you often meet people who are exactly as you describe. You know, they don't write books about this, they don't write articles, they're not on TV, but they have an instinctive appreciation of exactly the points you're making there. I think those people are heroic, because anyone who can withstand that nightly pressure from the BBC to be anti-Israel, that in itself is a heroic thing to be able to do. That shows real moral resolve to be able to withstand that kind of pressure, which is just relentless. I did want to talk to you about the knock-on effect of all of this stuff for Jewish people in the West. So we'll come back to Israel in a second, but, you know, I want to ask you about the anti-Semitism crisis, which in my mind is the worst outburst of racism of my lifetime. I mean, it is just extraordinary what's happening now in the West. And we've seen Jews in America, people outside a Jewish institution being shot dead. We've seen Jews being set on fire. You know, they're burning Jews again. This is what's happening in Colorado, in the United States. And of course, there have been daily attacks and forms of abuse across Europe as well. Really extraordinary stuff. The so-called anti-racists aren't talking about it. If anything, they're making excuses for it. You know, the so-called anti-fascists don't seem particularly perturbed by this resurgence of fascistic sentiment. That's getting really bad, isn't it? And it does seem to me to be a consequence, or to at least have a very close relationship with the relentless demonization of the Jewish nation.
Absolutely. One has legitimized the other. They are symbiotically connected. The demonization of Israel, which we've obviously just been talking about, one of the notable things about that is that there is no other people, nation, cause on earth which is subjected to this. It is a unique singling out. And the point about anti-Semitism is that it's not another kind of racism. It's not just another kind of prejudice. Yeah. It is unique. It has unique characteristics. And those unique characteristics we are finding in the treatment of Israel. The unique characteristics include not just, you know, loathing of Jews as a group, not even hatred of Jews as a group. It's an investing of Jews as a group with a positively demonic character, that they have a power to hijack events in the world to their own interests and to the disadvantage of everybody else, that they are uniquely cruel and callous and self-interested, that they are simultaneously powerful and ridiculous and loathsome and rubbish, but it's a paranoia, and so those are some of the characteristics which tell, and those things are all true of so-called anti-Zionism and anti-Israelism. Yeah, you know, there is no other people on earth who are told that they are not entitled to want a homeland of their own, that the very act of wanting it is itself a form of prejudice. I mean, this is completely unique as a perverse and bizarre and absurd point of view. So the uniqueness is one giveaway that the two are connected. But then there is this idea that all Jews are responsible for what happens in the state of Israel, even though there are so many Jews who have nothing to do with Israel, who are not interested in Israel. And it's only if you are a Jewish person, you have to prove that you are entitled to be free of prejudice if you dump on Israel and go along with the lies. Yeah. And that's what's been happening. And I think that, you know, I mean, this is part of what I've written in my book, The Builder's Stone, trying to unravel all of this and make sense of it. But if you look at the extreme pathological nature of the reaction to October 7, you look at the people who tore down the posters of the hostages, They weren't tearing down posters advertising the Israel Defense Forces. They weren't advertising, come and have a holiday in Tel Aviv. They were tearing down pictures of babies and children and women and men who everyone knew had been kidnapped by bloodthirsty people who had done these terrible things in raping and beheading and burning alive, and were probably doing something very similar to these unfortunates who are being kept underground. So these were victims many times over, as it were. And they were being torn down by people whose faces were convulsed with hatred and rage, torn down with their fingernails. Mm. And it seemed to me that it was a kind of metaphorical and physical expression of what we're seeing in this, as you correctly say, the greatest, the most widespread and vicious outbreak of anti-Semitism, really probably in history, given the scale of it. That for these people in the West, they are trying to tear the Jews out of their lives, out of their heads, out of their consciences, out of their world. They want the Jews gone. Now, why do they want them gone? Well, there are many reasons for that. I mean, one's being asked to explain anti-Semitism, which frankly defies explanation. It's protean. It has existed ever since the Jews first surfaced as a people back in antiquity. It has taken different forms in different generations, in different cultures. It's been personal. It's been religious. It's been against a race. And now it's against a collective people in Israel. So it is ultimately, perplexing. But one of the things that's so notable about this reaction to October 7 and now about the reaction to Iran, to Israel's attack on Iran, and the refusal to accept that Israel is actually the victim, and the refusal to accept that the Israelis are the victims of the Palestinian Arab onslaught, which has been taking place for 100 years. Refusal to accept that the Israelis are victims. Refusal to accept the Jews are victims. Jewish victimhood is what sends people absolutely mad. Now, why should it send them mad? Well, again, you're going into realms which are seriously insane. I've heard it said, the Jews suck up all the victimhood in the world and leave none for people like us. What on earth does that mean? It means that, the Holocaust was so enormous, none of us can compete with that. Well, it's not a competition. We can all be victims and nevertheless accept, the Holocaust was a unique thing of unique awfulness. It doesn't mean that you can't be a victim. But then a further question arises, which I have pondered. Okay, it's crazy. They think that, they can't be victims because we have all the victimhood. All right. Why do they want to be victims? Why should anyone want to be a victim? And then you get to the root of this, and the root of it is even blacker than anyone might think. Because why do they want to be a victim? Well, because it's not nice to be a victim. It means that, if someone's being horrible to you, someone's attacking you, you might get hurt. Why would anyone want to be a victim? Because as a victim, you cannot be held responsible for anything you do. Mm-hmm. Anything that happens, anything that you do, if you attack somebody, it's not your fault. You're driven to it by the powerful group. You are powerless because you're a victim. Because you're a victim, you are powerless. Therefore, the person that you've attacked, if he's in a power group, it's his fault. So there's that going on. Okay, so they want to be free of moral responsibility. Okay, but there's something even worse than that. Because what do they think, therefore, about the Jews? They think that anti-Semitism lets the Jews get away with it by pretending to be victims. Oh, really? What is it that the Jews' victimhood, or professions of victimhood, what is it that the Jews get away with precisely? Well, they get away with pretending that they're not what we know they are, which is all-powerful people who want to control us in their own interests to the disadvantage of all the rest of us. And they wreak havoc everywhere because they control everything. They control our life. In other words, at the root of this victim culture attitude is the idea that the Jews are the evil people in the world. So at the very root of this, and this is the thing that really binds all this together, the anti-Semitism we're seeing on the streets, the terrible attitude to Israel, the terrible attitude to Israel, attitude towards Iran, the way in which the Western brain has been fried over the Palestinian issue and all that, it's all linked by the fact that there is this driving belief that the Jews are getting away with trying to pretend that they're not the evil people we think they are.
Yeah.
In other words, it's systemic, it's endemic, it is civilizational, and it will destroy the West. It will destroy the West because here's the thing. Israel is fighting for its life because it believes in life, because it believes in itself. It wants to live, and it's determined to live because it understands that it has no alternative, but also because it loves what it is. It loves the Jewish people. It loves Judaism. It loves the state of Israel as the national vehicle for a way of life that it thinks will bring good to the world. And so it wants to live. And the West, in turning against the Jews, has turned against the Jewish part of itself because Jewish values lie at the very bottom, the very core of Western civilization. And it's turning against goodness in favor of evil, and it will destroy itself. It's already destroying itself. It's dying out. It's not having babies. It's not replacing itself as a culture. And it's now going to tear itself apart. It's setting group against group inside itself. Because it's denied all the values that have kept the West together and kept the Western cultural show on the road. So, in Israel, Israel is fighting and it will win and it will survive and it will become a regional power and I think the leader of the free world, actually, because Britain has departed from any claim to stand for anything good now. And America is riven. Okay, we've got President Trump, who is, a loose cannon, to put it mildly. America is riven down the middle, really, divided down the middle between people who want the West to survive, want America to survive as a Western nation, people who don't. So, that's sort of work in progress. We don't know how that's going to end. But America, nevertheless, has basically abdicated its role, very noisily abdicated its role as leader of the free world. President Trump says, don't care about Europe anymore, has to look after itself. We only care about America. Okay. So, where's the leader of the free world? It's Israel. Israel is fighting Iran on its own at the moment. Okay, it's being defended by America. Sure. It needs that. Absolutely. But it took the risk. It is paying with its own Israeli blood for the fight that it's waging on behalf of the free world, on behalf of itself, obviously, but on behalf of the free world, against an Iran that threatens the free world. Israel is paying in its own blood for this. The West, America is not, Britain is certainly not, France is certainly not. And Israel is going to become literally the leader of freedom in the world as a result of this. And the West is going to continue to tear itself apart because it has taken the side of evil against good.
Yeah. And not a word of gratitude from the West for what Israel is doing. Precisely the opposite, in fact, as you've been saying. The points you make there about victim culture and the violence of victim culture, because it absolves you of responsibility and the victim can then become the person who commits heinous acts. That's very well put, and it's outlined brilliantly in your book, The Builder's Stone, which we talked about last time you were on the podcast. And you end up in a situation where even 7th of October, the worst pogrom we've seen since the 1940s, can be justified as just a screech of rage by victims. That's how leftists and some liberals talk about it. It's extraordinary. You touched there on America and the West and their relationship with Israel, and I did want to ask you about that. I guess in a two-pronged way. Firstly, do you think America is turning its back on Israel? And this might go for Trump as well, I mean, he's not as bad as Biden on these questions, but there is a nervousness in relation to Trump. As you said earlier on, he's the man who says, I want to stop wars, not take part in them. Other sections of the right in America are now openly anti-Israel. I mean, the Tucker Carlsons of the world and Candace Owens, although she does seem to have gone off the rails somewhat, but they, these are not insignificant voices, and they now sound indistinguishable from the crank left in terms of what they say about Israel and even what they say about Jews sometimes.
Right.
So, that kind of shift that's taking place in sections of the populist right, as some people might define it, does that worry you as well?
Very much so. There is certainly that element in MAGA, Make America Great Again movement. And there are those elements which are very prominent in the Trump administration. I viewed this with horror as he brought them in. And the question was, is he with them or is he just being a kind of politician who wants to ride all these different horses simultaneously? I think it's the latter, actually.
Right.
I don't think Trump actually thinks deeply about very much. I was very heartened in the last day or so to see, in fact, I think just today, to see him denouncing Tucker Carlson on Truth Social, saying, someone's got to tell him that, Iran mustn't get the bomb. Okay. So there is a kind of break there, which I think is very reassuring. But those people are certainly there, and they represent an important strain in this, in the Make America Great movement, which is isolationist, conspiratorially thinking. And once you go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, you end up immediately upon Jew hatred, because Jews, anti-Jewishness is the ultimate conspiracy theory. Is America an ally of the Jewish people? I mean, I think Trump, again, I don't know the man. I've never talked to him. I'm just looking at it, using my own judgment in a very bewildering situation, because clearly he says different things at different times of the day. But my judgment is that he really does have a love for the Jewish people and a love for the state of Israel. His problem, however, is that he has certain character traits, psychological flaws, which get in the way of making that a kind of reality. So one trait is that he does believe that everything in the world is a potential deal, and that if he is in charge of the dealing, he can make the deal. I remember with the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran, which President Obama brokered, which was disastrous. It would have given Iran the bomb with just a few years' delay. It funneled huge amounts of money into Tehran's coffers to do the terrible things that it did subsequently, and all kinds of stuff like that. Trump came along and said, it's a terrible deal. I could have done a better one. And I thought, no, that's wrong. There was no deal that could be done that was better. But in he comes into office, and he still thinks, I can do the deal. I can do the deal with Hamas. I can do the deal with Iran. And off he sends Mr. Witkoff. Now, Mr. Witkoff may be an absolutely splendid fellow with an IQ off the planet, off the charts, but he's made himself a complete idiot. By basically going cap in hand to people who are thinking, we can see this guy coming. We can actually, manipulate him so easily by telling him what he wants to hear and all that kind of stuff. So I was looking at this with great dismay. And I still think this is a great flaw in Trump's character. He thinks that everything is potential deal. And you can hear it now, even now that his rhetoric about Iran has got, in the last 24 hours, much more bullish. He's basically saying, I gave them the offer.
Yeah.
I gave them the offer of a deal. I showed them how they could get away with, come away from this terrible war and everybody will be happy. Well, no, that was never on the card. So he still has that issue. So I think, he loves Israel. He loves the Jewish people. He has a temperament and a character which gets in the way of sensible policy decisions, which follow from that rather noble instinct to love Israel and the Jewish people. Beyond that, the Democratic Party is finished in terms of its support for Israel, or indeed truth, or indeed decency or morality for the foreseeable future. It has just completely lost the plot in a way that I think that, the Labour government has completely lost the plot. The Labour Party has lost the plot like forever. unless it really does, renege on everything that it supposedly holds dear, because it has absolutely gone down these rabbit holes of left-wing ideology, which have turned truth and lies inside out, basically. And there's no coming back from that. So where do we go from there? Who knows? I mean, in Britain, there's reform. Well, has that really got it? Has that really got what it takes? Does Nigel Farage really understand the stakes here, the civilizational stakes? I'm not sure, but work in progress. The Conservative Party, I mean, I like Kemi Badenoch a lot. I think she says some very sensible things, but has she given us the impression that she understands the kind of civilizational inflection point which has been reached in Britain, because the Conservative Party has failed to understand the civilizational issues that are at stake? I haven't seen it yet. I might do. We might do, but I haven't seen it yet. So, I have great fears about the West generally. And I think that, the West will only start to love and admire and respect Israel and the Jewish people when it starts to connect with its own core values, when it starts to understand how it has destroyed them, how it has destroyed the idea of truth and has embraced lies, how it has destroyed the idea of conscience, the distinction between right and wrong, on the basis that everything is merely a matter of opinion, how it has sacrificed truth to ideology and truth to power. Everything is now in terms of power relations. And as a result, it's embracing evil. Only when the West begins to understand what it's done to itself and begins to start to put it right, really put it right, that is when it will begin to admire, trust, love and respect Israel and the Jewish people. Not until then.